She yanked her sleeve down so hard it almost knocked the pen off the counter. Nobody in the room saw it. Nobody except Ethan Carter. In that half-second before the gray fabric fell back to her wrist, he saw something that turned his stomach cold. A bruise dark and wide spread across the inside of her forearm like a shadow with purpose behind it. Not from a fall, not from bumping a shelf, a bruise with a story. She looked up, held his gaze for exactly 1 second, then looked back at the floor. She didn't know he'd seen it. Or maybe she did, and she just didn't believe it would matter. Either way, what happened next would change both their lives forever. Drop your city in the comments right now. Let's see how far this story travels. And if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button, because this one goes all the way. 3 days after Ethan Carter told her, "Just cook, that's all I need," Mia Torres had spoken fewer than 30 words to him outside the kitchen. She came in at 7. She tied on her apron. She got to work. She did not make small talk. She did not look up when customers wandered near the kitchen door. When a man's voice in the dining room climbed above a certain volume, a regular named Dave, who laughed too loud and meant nothing by it, she didn't react visibly. No flinch, no alarm, just a stillness, a careful, practiced stillness. The kind a person develops when they've learned that being very, very quiet is the safest thing they can do. Ethan had told himself she was simply shy. He was wrong. He just didn't know it yet. Monday. Ethan Carter had been staring at the same column of numbers for 40 minutes when the math finally confirmed what he already knew. The Cornerstone Cafe wasn't closing next month. It was closing this month. Maybe sooner. 6 years. 6 years of waking up at 5 a.m. 6 years of second-hand tables and painting his own walls and learning the hard way. Always the hard way, how to run a small business when you start with nothing but a modest loan. 2 good hands and the stubborn conviction that a neighborhood deserved a real place to eat. 6 years, and here he was, 38 years old, single father, 3 weeks from locking the door for good. His last cook, a kid named Jason, had quit 2 weeks ago, said he wanted to travel, wished Ethan well, and disappeared. Ethan had wished him well right back, and then immediately started panicking, because without a cook there was no food. Without food there was no cafe. Without the cafe there was no income. And without income there was Sophie. Sophie, who was 8 years old and needed new shoes and a school field trip deposit, and a father who wasn't drowning in his own business. He'd posted the job listing Monday morning. He'd gotten 3 applications, 2 no-shows. One man who'd walked in, glanced at the kitchen, said, "I could make more delivering pizza," and left. So when the door opened at 9:15 and the small bell above it rang, Ethan looked up from his notepad, not expecting much. He was just hoping. She stopped just inside the doorway, not the way nervous people stop shifting their weight scanning the room. She stopped the way someone stops when they're genuinely not sure whether they have the right to come any further in. She was in her mid-20s. Heavy-set with dark hair pulled back, simply wearing a long-sleeved gray sweater despite the warm morning. She held a manila folder pressed flat against her chest with both hands, like it was something worth protecting. She was not looking at him. "Help you," Ethan said. Her eyes came up just enough to find his face, then dropped again to somewhere around his collar. "I saw the listing," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "For the cook position. Is it still open?" "It is," he said. "You have experience." She held out the folder. He came around the counter, took it, and flipped it open. The resume was clean. Organized. Line cook at a hotel restaurant for 2 years. Kitchen assistant at a family diner for 18 months. Both positions ended without explanation. He looked at her. She was looking at the floor. "Sit down," he said, nodding toward the nearest table. "You want coffee?" "No, thank you." She moved toward the chair and sat, the way people sit when they're not sure the floor beneath them is solid. Slow, careful, already braced. Ethan sat across from her and set the folder down. "Tell me something your resume can't," he said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she looked up at him directly for the first time since she'd walked in and said plainly, "I need this job." That's not usually how people open an interview. I know. She didn't apologize for it. I know you're supposed to sell yourself. Give you 5 reasons I'm the best candidate. I'm not good at that. She paused. What I'm good at is cooking. I'll show up every single day. I'll keep a clean kitchen. I'll work whatever hours you need. What kind of cooking? He asked. Something happened in her face then, subtle, like a room where someone has just turned on a light that's been off for a long time. Everything, she said. Home cooking. American, some Italian, some Mexican. Soups from scratch, bread from scratch, roasts. I made my first roux when I was 11 years old. Ethan looked at her. That last sentence didn't come from a resume. It came from somewhere real, a memory that still mattered to her, surfacing without calculation. You been turned down somewhere else? He asked. The light went off again. A few places, she said quietly. He didn't ask her to elaborate. He already knew the story. You didn't spend 17 years in the restaurant business without learning how some managers operated the way they looked at a person before they ever touched a resume, before they ever said a word. Ethan thought about his grandmother. Largest woman in every room she walked into. Made the best food he'd ever eaten in his life. Fed 40 people at Christmas for 30 years without anyone ever once suggesting her size had anything to do with her ability. He looked at Mia Torres. He looked at her resume. Monday morning, he said. 7 a.m. We'll see how the week goes. She looked up at him, fully for the first time without looking away. Thank you, she said. 2 words. But the weight she put behind them was the weight of something much longer. She stood, shook his hand, firm, steady grip, and walked out without looking back. Ethan stood at his counter for a moment after the door closed, tapping his pen against his palm. He didn't know anything about this woman. He didn't know where she came from or who had called her phone just before she left, a call she'd ended quickly without answering. Slipping the phone back into her pocket with a practiced speed that told him it wasn't the first time she'd done exactly that. He knew she had experience. He knew she could cook. That was all he needed to know. For now, that was enough. Tuesday. Sophie Carter had many excellent qualities. Patience was not among them. She came downstairs at 6:50 a.m. in her school clothes, with her backpack already strapped on, settled onto the second-to-last step of the staircase like it was a command post, and watched the back entrance with the focus most 8-year-olds reserved for Saturday morning cartoons. Sophie, Ethan said from behind the coffee urn. She's not here yet, Sophie reported. I know. It's 6:50. She's not late yet. I know. I'm monitoring. You're going to scare her. I'm sitting on a step, Dad. That's not scary. That's just sitting. What are you planning to do when she gets here? Sophie considered this with genuine seriousness. Talk to her. About what? I haven't finalized it yet. Probably food. Ethan pointed toward the stairs. Go eat your breakfast. I ate. Then go. She's here. Sophie stood up. The back door had opened. Mia stepped in, took one step into the hallway, and stopped when she saw Sophie standing there at the foot of the stairs. The two of them looked at each other. Ethan didn't move. Hi, Sophie said. Hi, Mia said. I'm Sophie. My dad owns this place. I know. He mentioned you. He mentions me a lot, Sophie said in a tone that suggested she found this entirely appropriate. I have a question for you. Mia waited. Can you make pancakes with fresh blueberries? Sophie. Ethan started. Dad, this is important. She looked back at Mia. Can you? Mia was quiet for just a moment. Then slowly, the way something works its way loose after being stuck for a long time, she smiled. It wasn't a big smile. It didn't take over her whole face. It was small and careful, like it wasn't sure yet whether it was welcome. But it was real. Fresh or frozen blueberries? Mia asked. Sophie put her hand on her hip. Fresh, obviously. Then yes, Mia said. I can. Sophie turned to her father. I like her, she announced definitively. Then she went back upstairs. Mia watched her go. The small smile lingered for a second, then faded when she turned back toward the kitchen and started untying her bag. Sorry about her, Ethan said. She doesn't have much of a filter. She's wonderful, Maya said without turning around. She tied on her apron with practiced efficiency and moved to the prep station. She said it quietly, not like a compliment being paid, like a truth being acknowledged by someone who had learned to keep true things small and quiet, so they don't get taken away. Wednesday. He sold out of soup by 12:30. Every table was full. Both booths that Ethan had stopped bothering to set up 3 months ago were occupied. He'd had to pull a chair from the storage corner to seat a party of 3. It had started with the woman from the flower shop across the street. She'd come in for a quick lunch, ordered the chicken soup without much thought, and an hour later was on her phone telling her neighborhood Facebook group that it tasted like something her grandmother used to make. By 11 o'clock, Ethan had 4 people walk in specifically asking about the soup. And they weren't wrong to make the trip. He'd tasted it himself during the morning prep, real stock built low and slow with noodles that had some give to them, and vegetables that still had personality, finished with a hit of lemon and fresh herbs that made the whole thing suddenly feel alive. It tasted like the kind of cooking that takes place when the person making it genuinely cares what happens to it. People could tell. After the lunch rush ended, Ethan came through the kitchen door and found Mia cleaning down the prep station with the same methodical quiet she brought to everything. Mia, he said. She turned. Something tightened in her expression, a small bracing, like she was already running through what she might have done wrong. We sold out, he said. Of everything. Soup's gone. Bread's gone. I turned 3 people away. She looked at him without speaking. That hasn't happened here in a long time, he said. You want to tell me the secret? No secret, she said. Real stock, real time. People can tell the difference, even when they don't know why. Clearly. He leaned against the doorframe. You want to do a special tomorrow? I was thinking pot roast, she said. Low and slow. I'd need to start it early. How early? 6. I'll have coffee on at 5:30, he said. She nodded, turned back toward the counter. He was almost out the door when he stopped. Mia. She paused. You did good today, he said. I want you to know that. She didn't turn around. She stayed facing the counter, one hand resting flat on the surface. Then, very quietly, thank you. He left her to close up the kitchen. He didn't see her stand there with her eyes pressed shut for a moment, her hand gripping the edge of the counter. He didn't know that nobody had said those words to her. You did good in longer than she could remember. Thursday. The kitchen was reading close to 80 degrees by 8:30 and still climbing. Ethan had pushed his sleeves to his elbows before he'd finished his second cup of coffee. 2 regulars who came in early were already asking for ice water. The pot roast had been in the oven since 6, and it had filled the entire cafe with a smell that made people walking past the front window actually slow down. Mia was at the stove, sleeves down to her wrists. Ethan had told himself every day not to read anything into it. People ran cold. People had scars from old accidents they didn't want to explain. It was none of his business. But Thursday morning, standing in a kitchen that was already hot enough to make him sweat through his shirt, he stopped being able to tell himself it was nothing. He went to hand her a dish towel. That's all it was, a small thing. 30 seconds of his day. But she was reaching across the prep station when he stepped toward her, and her sleeve slid back 2 inches, 3 inches, and he saw it. Burns. 3 of them. Small. Round. On the inside of her right wrist, spaced with a precision that had nothing to do with kitchen accidents. The kind of marks that come from something held against someone's skin deliberately with someone's hand keeping it there. Something closed hard in Ethan's chest. He held out the dish towel. "Thank you," she said, already pulling her sleeve back down, already turning back to the stove, already moving on before he could say a single word. He walked out front. He stood behind his counter and looked at the far wall and didn't move for a moment. He thought about Jason, his last cook, who used to complain that the kitchen got too hot even in February. He thought about spatter burns he'd gotten over the years, the randomness of them, the jagged edges, the way they came from moments of inattention or bad luck. He thought about those 3 marks on her wrist. Round, even, deliberate. He picked up a coffee mug and wiped it down and set it back. He didn't go back into the kitchen. He didn't say a word to Mia, because he understood with the same quiet certainty that sometimes comes without explanation, that if he walked back through that door right now and said, "I saw your wrist," she would untie her apron and walk out of his cafe, and he would never see her again. So he stayed out front. He served his tables. He smiled at Dave, who laughed too loud. He refilled coffee, and he let her cook. Friday. The back door was propped open for ventilation. Ethan was in the storage room doing a supply count when he heard the voice. Male. Low. Not shouting, but carrying the way voices carry when the person using them has learned that volume isn't the only way to make a point. He came to the doorway. Mia was standing just outside the back door, back to him, phone pressed against her ear. Her arms were wrapped around herself, not folded loosely, not comfortably. Wrapped. The way a person holds themselves together when they're afraid that without that pressure something might come apart. "I told you I'm working." Her voice was low and fast. I'm not doing this right now. Please, don't." She stopped, listened. "I know," she said. "I know. I'll call you when I'm done. Please just—" She stopped again. Longer this time. Ethan watched her back. Then whatever came through the phone happened, and Mia went completely rigid. The way a person goes rigid when something cold passes through them. "Okay," she said. Flat, quiet. The single word of someone who has stopped arguing, not because they agree, but because they've run out of ways to fight. "Okay." She ended the call. She stood there with her back to the door, not moving. Ethan stayed quiet. Then she turned. For one unguarded second, 1 second before she pulled herself back together, her face was completely open, and what he saw in that second was not embarrassment, was not the look of someone caught in a personal moment. What he saw was exhaustion, the kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from a long shift or a bad week, the kind that comes from carrying the same weight for so long that you've forgotten what you felt like before you picked it up. Then she put herself back together, fast and efficient, the way she did everything. "Sorry," she said, moving toward the door. "I just needed a minute. I'm coming back in." "Mia." "I'm fine." She moved past him into the kitchen to her station. Her hands were already moving. Her eyes were already on the stove. Her voice, when she spoke again, was exactly as steady as it always was. "The roast needs about 15 more minutes," she said. "I can have it plated by 12:15. Ethan looked at her for a moment. "Okay," he said. He went back out front. Chubby. That evening, after the cafe was dark and the chairs were on the tables, and Sophie was upstairs in bed, Ethan sat at his counter with a coffee that had gone cold. He was not a man who spent a lot of time in his own head. He considered that a point of pride. He was practical, direct. A man who identified a problem, moved toward it, and dealt with it. But tonight, he sat still. He thought about Monday, the bruise he'd seen when she reached for the pen. A shadow spread across the inside of her wrist. He thought about Thursday, the burns, round and small and deliberate on the inside of her right arm. He thought about today, the call, the way her body had locked up the single word she'd said at the end of it. Okay. The word of someone who had stopped expecting anything better. He thought about the way she flinched barely quickly every time a man's voice climbed above a certain level in the dining room. The way she ate her lunch alone in the back, standing up eating fast. The way she said, I'm fine, the way people say things they've stopped believing. He thought about how she had smiled at Sophie. How for just a moment something had come back to life in her face that looked like it had been absent for a long, long time. Ethan Carter had not gone to college. He had not read books about trauma or psychology, or the long shadow a bad relationship can cast on the person who survived it. He was a man who had learned what he knew from watching his parents, from raising his daughter, from 38 years of being alive in the world and paying attention. He knew what it looked like when someone was loved well, and he knew what it looked like when someone had spent years being convinced, slowly and thoroughly, that they deserved less than that. Less than dignity. Less than basic decency. Until the subtraction had gone on so long, they couldn't remember what the full number used to be. He stood up. He rinsed his cold coffee down the drain, turned off the last light, and went upstairs. Sophie's door was open 2 inches the way she liked it. He pushed it open a little further and looked in. She was asleep with her arm around a stuffed rabbit she refused to acknowledge she still slept with. Her hair was across her face. She was breathing slow and even. He stood there in the doorway for a while. He thought about what it would mean. What it would really mean to be told day after day in the small and relentless ways that are harder to name than a shout that you were less. That you took up too much space. That you were lucky anyone put up with you at all. To hear it until you couldn't hear anything else. He thought about Mia Torres walking into his cafe 5 days ago holding a folder against her chest, like a shield barely able to meet his eyes. He thought about what she'd said to him when she sat down across from that table. I need this job. He had thought at the time that she meant money. He understood now, standing in his daughter's doorway, that what she needed had nothing to do with money. She needed this kitchen, this imperfect, struggling, barely surviving cafe. This routine of showing up somewhere and doing something that mattered and being told at the end of a hot and difficult Wednesday, you did good today. She needed something that was hers, something that belonged to her, something that hadn't yet been taken. He pulled Sophie's door back to its usual 2 inches. He went to his own room and lay down in the dark. Whatever was on the other end of that phone call, whatever was out there waiting for Mia Torres, it hadn't found its way through his front door yet. He was a practical man. He knew he couldn't stop what was coming. He didn't know the shape of it, didn't know how close it was, didn't know yet how bad it was going to get before it got better. But he knew this Monday morning at 5:30, he was going to have coffee on. And she was going to walk through that door and tie on her apron and get to work. And whatever came after that, he wasn't going to look away. Monday morning, 5:32, and the coffee was already on. Ethan heard the back door before he saw her. He always did. Mia opened it the same way every time, slow, careful, like she was worried about waking someone up 2 floors above her. You're early, he said. Roast takes 6 hours if you want it right. I said 5:30. It's 5:32. Then I'm late, she said, and tied on her apron. He poured her a cup and set it on the prep station beside her. She looked at it, then at him. You don't have to do that, she said. Do what? Pour me coffee. I can't pour my own coffee. I know you can, he said. I poured it anyway. She didn't answer, but she picked up the cup and she drank it, and Ethan went out front to unlock the door and pretended he hadn't noticed that she held it with both hands like it might get away from her. By 7:15, there were 4 people waiting outside. By 7:40, the line was to the corner. Ethan had run this cafe for 6 years, and he had never once, not on a holiday, not on a good Saturday, not the week the food blogger came through, seen a line to the corner. He came into the kitchen with his order pad in his hand, and he was almost laughing. Mia. Yeah. There's a line. How long? To the corner. She stopped stirring. The corner? The one with the mailbox. That corner. Mia was quiet for a second. Then she said, How many can you seat? 32 if I pull the storage chairs. Pull them. Mia, I don't have the bread for 32. You have flour. I have flour. Then you have bread, she said. Give me 40 minutes. He watched her for a second longer than he meant to. Something in the way she'd said it. Not panic. Not the frantic scramble he'd seen in 100 kitchens over 17 years. She'd just taken the problem, looked at it, and set it down in a place where it couldn't hurt anybody. "Okay," he said. "Ethan." He stopped in the doorway. It was the first time she'd used his name. "Tell them 15 minutes on the roast and don't apologize for it," she said. "If you apologize, they think something's wrong. If you just say 15 minutes, they think you're busy." He stared at her. "Where'd you learn that?" She turned back to the stove. "Hotel." By 9, Ethan had sold more plates than he had in the entire previous Thursday. By 10:30, he had sold out of bread again, and there was a woman from 2 blocks over standing at his counter, genuinely visibly upset about it. "You said 40 minutes, she said. "That was 2 hours ago, ma'am." "Well, can she make more?" "Ma'am, she's one person." "She's a miracle worker is what she is," the woman said, and put a 10 on the counter for a $6 bowl of soup and walked out before he could make change. Ethan stood there holding the 10. He looked at the kitchen door. Then he walked over to the register, opened the drawer, and started counting. And what he found in there made him stop and count it again, because the number in his hand was more than he had made in the first 3 weeks of the month combined. Sophie came down at 3:15 with her backpack still on. "Where is she?" "Hi, Sophie. How was school?" "Fine. Where is she?" "Kitchen. She's cleaning down. Don't get in her way." "I never get in her way," Sophie said, which was an outright lie, and went into the kitchen. Ethan gave it 30 seconds, then followed. He stopped just outside the door. "What are you making?" Sophie was saying. "Nothing. I'm cleaning." "What are you making tomorrow?" "I don't know yet." "You said you'd make pancakes." "I said I could make pancakes." "That's basically the same thing," Sophie said. There was a pause. Then Mia said, "Do you know what buttermilk is?" "No." "Then you don't know what a pancake is either." Ethan heard his daughter make a sound of pure outrage, and then unmistakably, he heard Mia laugh. It wasn't a big laugh. It was small and surprised, like something that had escaped before she could catch it. But it was there. It filled up 2 seconds of the kitchen, and then it was gone. Ethan didn't go in. He backed up and went out front and stood behind his counter and busied himself with absolutely nothing. At 4:40, he came back into the kitchen to find Sophie sitting on an overturned crate with a bowl in her lap and a whisk in her hand and a look of ferocious concentration on her face. "Sophie, what are you doing?" "Learning." "She's learning," Mia agreed. "Learning what?" "How to fold," Sophie said. "You don't stir. If you stir, it dies." "If you stir, it dies," Ethan repeated. "That's what she said." He looked at Mia. Mia looked back at him, and for the first time she didn't look away. "She asked?" Mia said. "She always asks." "I know. She's been asking for 11 minutes. "That sounds right." Sophie held up the bowl. Look at it. Dad, look." "I'm looking." "It's alive," Sophie said. Ethan looked at the batter in the bowl, and then at his daughter's face, and he thought with a suddenness that surprised him that he had not seen her look like that in a very long time. He didn't say that. He said, "Wash your hands after." "I washed them before." "Wash them after too." "Why?" "Because I said so." "That's not a reason," Sophie said. "That's a location." Behind her, Mia laughed again. Tuesday, 6:50 in the morning, and Ethan came downstairs to find Mia already at the stove and Sophie already on the crate. "Sophie, it's 10 to 7. "I know." "You have school in an hour." "I know." "How long have you been down here?" "Not long," Sophie said, which meant a long time. Mia didn't turn around. "She's been here since 6:20. "Traitor," Sophie said. "I don't lie to your father," Mia said. "Flip that one." Sophie flipped it. It landed wrong and folded over on itself, and she made a small, horrified sound. "That's fine," Mia said. "It's ruined." "It's not ruined. It's a pancake, not a bridge. Nobody's gonna die." "But it's ugly." So, Sophie looked up at her. Mia was still watching the pan. She said in the same flat, even voice she used to say everything. It's going to taste exactly the same. Ugly doesn't change what it does. Sophie considered this with total seriousness. Then she said, "Okay," and flipped the next one, and that one landed fine, and she cheered like she'd won something. Ethan stood in the doorway with his hand on the frame and did not say a word. At 2:10 that afternoon, the phone rang in Mia's pocket. Ethan was in the kitchen. He saw her stop. He saw her hand go to her hip, and then he saw her not take the phone out. She just stood there with her hand over her pocket while it buzzed 4 times, 5, 6. Then it stopped. Then it started again. "You can take that," Ethan said. "It's fine." "Mia, take the call." "It's fine." It rang 11 more times over the next 20 minutes. She never took it out of her pocket. She plated 8 orders. She wiped down the station twice once for no reason at all. And when the 12th call came, she turned the volume off without looking at the screen. Ethan went out front and stood at the register and set both hands flat on the counter and made himself breathe. He didn't go back in. Wednesday, 11 o'clock, the woman from the flower shop came in and asked to speak to the cook. "She's working," Ethan said. "I just want to say thank you. You can say it to me and I'll pass it on." "That's not the same and you know it," Ethan sighed. "Mia, someone wants to talk to you." Mia came to the kitchen door with a towel in her hands, and she came slowly, and she stopped a good 4 feet back from the counter, and Ethan watched her body do the thing it always did when strangers looked at her, which was get smaller. "Hi," the woman said. "I'm Denise. I'm across the street." "Hi. I ate here Wednesday. The soup." "Okay." "My mother died in March," Denise said. Mia's hands stopped moving on the towel. "She used to make a chicken soup," Denise said. "I've been trying to make it since March and I can't. I don't know what she did. I have the recipe. It's her handwriting, and it doesn't taste like it." She stopped. She put her fingers to her mouth for a second. "And then I ate yours." Nobody said anything. "So," Denise said, "that's all. That's the whole thing I came to say." Mia stood there. Then she said very quietly, "It's the stock." "What?" "The recipe doesn't tell you about the stock. Recipes never do. They say chicken broth like it's a thing you buy." Mia's voice had changed. Not louder, just steadier, like she'd found the floor under it. "Your mother made stock. Bones, 4 hours low. She just didn't write it down because she didn't think of it as part of the recipe. She thought of it as part of the kitchen." Denise stared at her. "Bones," she said. "Bones. 4 hours. Low," Mia said. "If it boils, it goes cloudy and it gets bitter, barely a bubble. If you have to ask yourself whether it's simmering, that's right." Denise put her hand on the counter to steady herself, and she said, "Thank you." And it came out wrong, and she went out fast without finishing her coffee. Ethan looked at Mia. "You just gave away your soup," he said. "I gave away her mother's soup," Mia said. "It was never mine." And she went back into the kitchen. Thursday, 1:15. The lunch rush over, and Ethan carried 2 plates into the back and set one of them down on the prep station. "What's this?" Mia said. "Lunch." "I don't eat during shift." "Shift's over. It's 1:15. I eat later." "You eat standing up in the back in about 4 minutes," Ethan said. "I've watched you do it every day for 2 weeks. Sit down." She looked at the plate. She looked at him. Something crossed her face that he couldn't read, and then she said, "You made this?" "I made this." "Yourself." "I ran a kitchen for 11 years before you got here, Mia." "I know," she said. "That's not what I'm asking." He didn't understand the question. He said, "Sit down and eat or it gets cold, and then you have to eat cold eggs, and that's on you." She sat down. She ate 4 bites without saying anything. Then she said, "It's good." "Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not surprised." She put the fork down. And she stopped. "You're what?" "Nothing." "Mia." It's stupid. Say it anyway. She sat there a second. Then she said, "The last time somebody cooked for me, I was 22. Ethan didn't move. "That's it," she said. "That's the whole thing. That's what I was going to say. It's stupid." "It's not stupid. It's a plate of eggs." "It's not stupid," Ethan said again. She picked the fork back up. She ate the rest of it. She didn't look at him once, and her hand shook slightly around the fourth bite, and Ethan looked at the door and gave her that. At 3 that afternoon, Sophie came home and announced that she had told her entire class about the pancakes. "The entire class," Ethan said. "During share time. It's a share." "What did you share exactly?" "That my friend Mia is the best cook in the whole city, and that if you stir it dies." Mia had been carrying a tray. She stopped in the middle of the kitchen. "Your friend?" she said. "Yeah." "You said friend." Sophie looked up at her like she'd asked something obvious. "You are my friend." Mia stood there holding the tray. Ethan watched her mouth move and nothing come out of it, and then she said, "Okay," and turned around and put the tray down on the counter, and it took her about 4 seconds longer to put it down than it needed to. Sophie had already moved on. Sophie was talking about a boy named Marcus, who did not believe her about the pancakes. Mia stood at the counter with her back to the room. Ethan saw her shoulders go. Once. Just once. A single hard breath in and out. Then she picked up a knife and started on the onions, and she said in a voice that was almost normal, "Tell Marcus he can come try them." "Really?" "Saturday." "Really?" "If your dad says it's okay." "Dad. It's okay," Ethan said, and his voice came out rougher than he wanted it to, and he went out front. Friday, 8 in the morning, and the man came in. Ethan clocked him the second the bell rang. 30-something. Clean shirt. Nice haircut. Sunglasses he didn't take off inside, which was the first thing, and a smile he put on before he needed one, which was the second. "Morning," Ethan said. "Morning." The man looked around the cafe, slowly taking his time with it. "Nice place." "Thanks. Coffee?" "Sure. Black?" He sat at the counter. He didn't take out a phone. He didn't take out a laptop. He just sat there with his hands on the counter and looked at things. "You been here long?" 6 years. 6 years? Wow. The man nodded slowly. "That's a long time. You must know everybody." "Pretty much." "Yeah." The man smiled. "I heard the food got good recently." Ethan set the coffee down. "Food's always been good." "That's not what I heard." Something moved in Ethan's chest, nothing on his face. "Well," Ethan said, "you can judge for yourself." "Oh, I'm going to." The man picked up the coffee. He didn't drink it. "You got a new cook, right? That's what I heard." "Who told you that?" "People talk." He turned the mug a quarter turn on the counter. "Small neighborhood. You live around here?" "Not exactly." Ethan looked at him. The man looked back pleasant, still smiling, sunglasses on. "Kitchen's closed till 9, Ethan said. "That's fine, I'm not hungry." The man stood up. He put a 5 on the counter for a $2 coffee he hadn't touched. "I'll come back." He walked to the door. Then he stopped with his hand on it, and he said without turning around, "Tell her Danny says hi." And he left. Ethan stood at his counter for a full 10 seconds without moving. Then he walked to the kitchen door and pushed it open. Mia was at the stove. Her back was to him. She hadn't heard anything, or she had heard everything he couldn't tell. "Mia." "Yeah." "You know a guy named Danny?" She didn't drop anything. She didn't gasp. She didn't do a single one of the things a person does in a movie. She just stopped. Completely. Every part of her at once. Like something had reached in and turned her off. She stood there with her hand on the panhandle, and she didn't move, and she didn't breathe. And Ethan watched the color go out of the back of her neck. "Mia?" "Where?" she said. "Here. Just now. He sat at my counter and drank my coffee and told me to tell you he says hi." She turned around. Ethan had seen fear before. He'd seen his daughter fall out of a tree when she was 6, and he'd seen her face on the way down. He'd seen a man's face in a walk-in when a shelf came loose over his head. This wasn't that. This was quieter than that, and it was so much worse. "What did he look like?" she said. "Sunglasses. Didn't take them off." "He never does." "Mia." "Was he smiling?" "Yes." She closed her eyes. "Okay," she said. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "That." Ethan came into the kitchen. "That thing where you say, okay, like it's fine. It's not fine." "Who is he?" "He's nobody." "He's not nobody. He came into my cafe and used your name." "He didn't use my name," Mia said. "He used his." Ethan stopped. "That's what that was," she said. "He didn't come here to see me. He came here so you'd tell me he was here." She reached up and turned the burner off, and her hand was steady, and that was somehow the worst part of all of it. "That's how it works. He doesn't have to do anything. He just has to let me know he can." "Mia, I have to go." "No, I have to." "Mia." She stopped at the apron strings. Her hands were behind her back and her fingers had gone still on the knot. "Look at me," Ethan said. She didn't. "Mia, look at me." She looked at him. "How long?" he said. "How long what? How long has it been like this?" She opened her mouth. Then she said 4 years. The kitchen was very quiet. 4 years, Ethan said. "Give or take." "Give or take." "It doesn't start," Mia said. "That's the thing nobody understands. Everybody wants the day. When did it start? What was the first thing?" "There isn't a first thing. It's a slope." She was looking somewhere past his shoulder now. "It's like you know how you don't notice the sun going down? You just look up and it's dark, and you can't say when." "Mia." "I could tell you the day I noticed," she said. "That's a different day. That's a much later day." Ethan set his hands on the prep station because he had to do something with them. "Are you safe?" he said. "I'm here." "That's not what I asked." "I know," Mia said. At 11:50, the kitchen phone rang. The cafe's landline, the one that took delivery orders, and almost nothing else. Ethan picked it up. Cornerstone. Nothing. Cornerstone Cafe. Nothing. Not silence. There was a room on the other end. There was somebody breathing in it. Ethan looked at the kitchen door. Then he said very calmly, "You come back here, I'm calling the police." The line clicked. He put the phone down and looked at it for a long time. At 1 o'clock, Sophie came home from school with a note from her teacher about a permission slip, and she came in the front door talking, and Ethan heard her voice, and something in him went completely rigid. He caught her by the shoulders in the doorway. Hey, kiddo." "What?" "You come in the back from now on, not the front." "Why?" "Because I said." "That's a location," Sophie said. "Sophie." Something in his voice. She stopped. "Okay," she said, small. He crouched down. "It's not you. Nothing's wrong. I just want you coming in the back. Okay, every day. Back door." "Okay, Dad." "Good girl." She went into the kitchen. He heard her say hi to Mia. He heard Mia say hi back, and he heard in Mia's voice that she had heard all of it. At 3:40, Mia came out front and stood at the end of his counter and said, "I'll quit." "No." "Ethan." "No. You have a daughter." "I'm aware. He knows where she is now," Mia said, and her voice cracked for the first time in 3 weeks, one clean fracture right down the middle of it. He came in the front door and he sat down and he looked around and he counted the exits. That's what he was doing. That's what all that looking around was, and now he knows this place has a kid in it, and that is because of me. "Mia, I'll quit and he'll stop. That's how it works. He doesn't want you. He wants me to know I can't have anything." She was breathing hard now. "So I won't have it. Fine. I've done it before. I'll do it again. It's not..." "Mia." It's not a big deal. I'll find something. Mia. What? The word came out of her like something breaking loose, and it echoed off the empty tables. And the second it was gone, she flinched hard, her whole body, and she put her hand over her mouth. Ethan didn't move. I'm sorry, she said through her fingers. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't. Mia. I raised my voice. I'm sorry. Mia, look at me. She was shaking. You raised your voice in a restaurant, Ethan said quietly. That's it. That's the whole thing that happened. Nothing else happened. She stood there with her hand over her mouth and stared at him. Nothing else is going to happen, he said, and she started to cry. Not the way people cry in movies. There was no sound to it at all. She just stood in the middle of his empty cafe, with her hand over her mouth and her eyes shut, and the tears came out, and she didn't make one single sound. And Ethan understood watching her, that she had learned to do it that way, that somebody had taught her to cry silently, and that thought put something into him that he did not know what to do with. He didn't touch her. He stood 4 feet away, and he said, You're not quitting. She shook her head. Say it. Ethan, you're not quitting. I'm not quitting, she said. Monday, 5:30, coffee'll be on. She made a sound then, half a laugh. It came out wrecked. Okay, she said. At 6:15, after she'd gone, Ethan locked the front door and turned the sign and stood there with his hand still on the bolt. Then he went to the kitchen and got the trash bag and took it out the back. The bag was in the dumpster and he was turning around when he saw it. The lid of the dumpster. Someone had put out a cigarette on it. Right there on the metal, still fresh enough that he could smell it. 3 of them. Round, small, evenly spaced. Ethan stood in his own alley and looked at those 3 marks, and his hands went cold, because he had seen that exact pattern before 2 weeks ago on the inside of a woman's wrist, when her sleeve slid back while she was reaching across a prep station on a hot Thursday morning. Someone had stood here. Someone had stood right here outside his back door where his daughter came in every day and smoked 3 cigarettes and lined them up like that on purpose, in a row where he would find them. Ethan Carter looked at the back door of his own cafe. Then he went inside and locked it, and he stood in his dark kitchen for a long moment, and he said out loud to nobody at all, Okay. Saturday, 5:40 in the morning, and Ethan was already at the back door with a cup of coffee in his hand when she came up the alley. You're standing outside, Mia said. I'm getting air. It's 5:40. It's good air at 5:40. She stopped in front of him. She looked at the dumpster, and then she looked at him, and she said, What did you find? Nothing. Ethan. Cigarettes, he said. She didn't say anything. 3 of them, he said. On the lid, lined up. Mia stood there in the alley with her bag over her shoulder. Then she said, That's not a threat. It sure looks like one. No, listen to me. Her voice was low and fast the way it got on the phone. If it was a threat, you'd have found it and not known what it meant. He put it where you'd find it, and he made sure you'd know exactly what it meant, and the only way you know what it means is if you'd already seen my arm. She looked up at him. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to you. Ethan felt something cold go all the way down his spine. He's telling me he knows what I know, he said. He's telling you he knows you've seen, Mia said, and that he doesn't care. Ethan set his coffee down on the step. Come inside, he said. At 6:15 the ovens were on and the roast was in, and Mia was doing something with a bowl, and Ethan came in with the register drawer and set it on the counter and said, New rules. Ethan, new rules. Number 1, you don't take out the trash. I take out the trash. I've been taking out the trash for 3 weeks. Number 2, he said, you don't go out that back door alone. Not to take a call, not for air, not for anything. You want air, you tell me, and I stand in the doorway like an idiot and you get your air. That's insane. Number 3, if that man comes in here, you go up the stairs, not the back, the stairs, and you lock my apartment door and you stay there. Mia put the bowl down. You've thought about this, she said. I didn't sleep, Mia. So yeah, I thought about it. She looked at him for a long moment. You're scared, she said. Yeah. You're saying that out loud. Should I not? Men don't, she said. Usually. Well, Ethan said, I'm scared. Mia turned back to her bowl. She picked up a whisk. She didn't use it. Then she said, Okay. At 8:30, Sophie came down in a dress. Ethan looked at her. Why are you in a dress? Because Marcus is coming. You hate Marcus. I don't hate Marcus. Marcus is wrong about pancakes. That's different from hating. She climbed onto the crate. Mia, he's going to be here at 9. He said 9. Then he'll be here at 9. What if he doesn't come? Then he doesn't come. But I told the whole class, Mia said without looking up. Sophie. What? If he doesn't come, the pancakes still taste the same. Sophie was quiet for a second. That's a Mia thing, she said. You always say Mia things. Is that bad? No, Sophie said. It's just how I know it's you. Mia's hand stopped on the counter. Ethan saw it. He saw the exact half-second where a woman who had spent 4 years being told she was nothing got told by an 8-year-old that she was a specific person with a way of talking that other people recognized. Mia said, Get the butter. Okay. Sophie. What? Cold butter, not the soft one. I know, Sophie said with enormous dignity and went to get the cold butter. Marcus came at 9:04 with his mother. He was small and skeptical, and he stood in the middle of the cafe and said, This doesn't look like a famous restaurant. Marcus, his mother said. It's not famous, Sophie said. It's better than famous. Sit down. Marcus sat down. Mia brought out the plate herself. She set it down. She didn't say anything. She stepped back and stood with her hands behind her back, which Ethan had learned by now was the thing she did instead of holding her breath. Marcus took a bite. Then he stopped chewing. Then he looked at his mother, and his mother looked at his face, and she said, Oh my God, and picked up a fork and took some off his plate, and Marcus said, Hey, and his mother said, Marcus, be quiet, and took another bite. Sophie folded her arms and looked at Marcus, and said absolutely nothing, which was the loudest thing in the room. Mia went back into the kitchen. Ethan followed her. She was at the sink with her hands on the edge of it. Mia, I'm fine. He liked it. I know. His mother's about to steal his whole plate. I know, Mia said, and she was laughing silently with her shoulders shaking and her head down, and it took Ethan a second to understand that she was laughing and not the other thing, and it took him another second to understand that with her, they came out of the same place. By 10:30, there were 9 people in the cafe, and every one of them had heard something from somebody. By 11, there were 14. At 11:20, Denise came in from the flower shop and put a paper bag on the counter and said, Bones. What? Ethan said. Tell her, Bones. 4 hours. Barely a bubble. Denise's eyes were red and she was smiling like an idiot. Tell her it worked. You made it. I made it last night. I stayed up till 1 in the morning. I made my mother's soup. She put her hand flat on the counter. Ethan, I made my mother's soup. Ethan said, Come tell her yourself. No, I'll cry, just tell her. And she left and Ethan went into the kitchen and said, Denise says it worked. And Mia said, What? And Ethan said, The soup. She made it. She says it worked. And Mia stood there with a knife in her hand and said, Oh, in a voice that was very small, and then she said, Oh, again, and turned around. At 11:52, the bell over the front door rang. Ethan looked up, and the whole room changed. He came in the same way he had on Friday. No hurry, same sunglasses, same shirt or one just like it. He stood just inside the door and he looked around the cafe unhurried, taking his time, and Ethan understood exactly what Mia had meant, because the man wasn't looking at the room. He was counting it. 14 customers, 2 exits, 1 kid at table 4 in a dress. Morning, Danny said. We're full, Ethan said. "You've got 2 seats at the counter." "We're full." Danny smiled. He took off the sunglasses and folded them and put them in his shirt pocket, and Ethan saw his eyes for the first time, and there was nothing wrong with them. That was the thing, they were normal eyes in a normal face, and somehow that was the most frightening part of the entire morning. "That's not very friendly," Danny said. "I'm not feeling very friendly. 6 years in the neighborhood." Danny nodded slowly. "That's a reputation, right? 6 years. Word gets around about a place." "Get out of my cafe." "I'm a paying customer." "Not anymore." "Huh," Danny said, and then he raised his voice, not much, just enough, just exactly enough, and he said, "MIA." The cafe went silent. Ethan came around the counter. "Don't," he said. "MIA," Danny said again. "Come out here." "Sir." A man at table 6 said, "There's kids in here." "I'm talking to my girlfriend," Danny said pleasantly, and the man shut up. And the kitchen door opened. Ethan didn't turn around. He said, "Mia, go upstairs." She came out anyway. She came out and stood in the doorway with a towel in her hands, and Ethan watched every single thing about her stop working at once. Her hands, her breathing. Her face went so completely blank that it stopped being a face. "Hi, baby," Danny said. "Mia," Ethan said. "Upstairs." "There she is." Danny put his hands in his pockets. He was smiling. He was still smiling. "You look tired." She didn't answer. "You look really tired," Danny said. "You've been eating, I bet you've been eating. That's the good news about a restaurant, right? All that food." He looked around at the 14 people. "That's the dream job for her, this. You know that guy gives her a whole kitchen." Nobody moved. "Hey," he said to the room, "how many of you tried the food show of hands?" "Get out," Ethan said. "It's good, right? It's really good." Danny nodded like they were agreeing with him. "She's good at that. That's the one thing. You want to know what she's not good at?" "That's enough." "She's not good at being seen," Danny said. "That's why she's in the back. That's why she asked for the kitchen job." "Did she ask?" "I bet she asked." He looked at Ethan with genuine interest. "Did she ask you to let her work in the kitchen?" Ethan didn't say anything. Danny laughed. "She asked," he said. "Of course she asked, because she knows. That's the thing about her, man, she knows. Nobody had to tell her." "Somebody told her," Ethan said. Danny stopped. "What?" "Somebody told her," Ethan said. "For 4 years. Somebody stood in front of her every day and told her. And now you're standing in my cafe telling my customers that she came up with it herself." The room was completely, totally silent. Danny looked at Ethan for a long moment. Then he said, "Mia, get your bag." "No," Mia said. It came out barely audible. "What was that?" "I said no." "Mia," Danny said, and there was something new in his voice now, something underneath the pleasantness. "Get your bag." "Danny, please." "Get your bag." And she flinched. Her whole body. Her arms came up. Not high, just a few inches, the automatic thing a body does when it has learned what comes after a certain volume, and her sleeves slid back. And the entire cafe saw it. 14 people. Denise's neighbor at table 2. The man at 6 with the kids. Marcus's mother, who was still sitting there with her son's plate in front of her. They saw the inside of her right forearm. Ethan saw it. Fresh. Not the old shadow he'd seen 3 weeks ago. New. 4 days old. Maybe 5. A hand's worth of it wrapped all the way around, dark at the edges where fingers had been. Something in Ethan Carter's chest went perfectly quiet. Mia yanked the sleeve down. Too late. Way, way too late. And that was the moment the whole thing turned. Because a woman at table 260-some years old, a woman Ethan had served coffee to twice a week for 4 years, and whose name he was ashamed to realize he'd never asked, stood up. She didn't say anything. She just stood up. Then the man at table 6 stood up. Then Marcus's mother stood up, and she put her hand on the back of her son's chair, and she looked at Danny, and she said, "You need to leave." "Sit down, lady." You need to leave right now. This is a private conversation. There are 12 people in here, she said. It's not private. It hasn't been private for 4 years. Danny's face changed. It happened fast. The pleasantness came off it the way a coat comes off all at once, and what was underneath was not a man having a bad moment. What was underneath had been there the entire time. Mia, he said. Now. She's not going anywhere, Ethan said, and he stepped in front of her. That was all he did. He took 2 steps, and he put himself between them, and he did it slow, and he didn't raise his hands, and he didn't say anything else. Danny looked at him. You're kidding, he said. Nope. You're a cafe guy. That's right. You're a guy who makes sandwiches, and you're standing in front of me. Yeah, Ethan said. You don't know anything about this. I know she's not going with you. You don't know what she is, Danny said, and his voice cracked on it, and that was the first honest thing he'd said since Friday. You've known her a month. I know her. I know what she is. You think she's this? He gestured at the kitchen, at the 14 people, at all of it. You think this is her? This is a month. This is a costume. In 6 months you'll see it, and you'll be exactly where I am, and you'll wonder how you didn't. Get out of my cafe. MIA! Danny shouted. Tell him! And Mia said from behind Ethan's shoulder, No. Tell him what you are. No. Tell him. No, Mia said. And it was louder this time, and it was shaking, and it was the loudest thing Ethan had ever heard her say. Danny picked up the chair. Ethan saw it coming, and there was nothing to do about it, and Danny swung it into the front window and the whole thing came down. 14 people screamed at once. Somebody grabbed Marcus. Somebody got Sophie. Ethan didn't see who. He found out later it was Denise's neighbor from table 2, a woman named Ruth, 68 years old, who covered an 8-year-old with her own body without 1 second of hesitation. Danny stood in the middle of the wreck. You want to know what happens now, he said. Yeah, Ethan said. Now you go to jail. I go to jail for a window. You go to jail for a window, Ethan agreed. And then I come back. Maybe. And she'll be here. Maybe. And you know what she'll do, Danny said. She'll go with me. She always does. Ask her. Ask her how many times. He looked past Ethan's shoulder. How many times, Mia? Tell him. Tell him how many times you left. Mia didn't say anything. Say it. 4, she said. 4 times. Danny said to the room, triumphant like he'd won something. 4 times she left, and 4 times she came back, and this is number 5, and you know what happens on number 5? And Ethan said, No one owns you. He didn't say it to Danny. He turned his head just enough, and he said it over his shoulder, quiet in the exact same voice he'd used on Wednesday when he told her the soup sold out. Mia, no one owns you. Not anymore. The room did not move, and Mia Torres stood in a cafe full of broken glass and looked at the back of Ethan Carter's head, and something happened in her face that Ethan didn't see and that 14 people did. She stepped out from behind him. She stood next to him, and she looked at Danny Reyes and she said, I'm not coming. Mia, I'm not coming. Not this time. Not the next time. Her voice broke in the middle, and she kept going anyway, and that was the thing, she kept going. You can stand there, and you can tell them whatever you want. You can tell them I'm nothing. You've been telling me that for 4 years, and I believed you, Danny. I believed you. I believed you so hard that I stopped calling my mother. Baby. Don't. Baby, listen. Don't call me that, Mia said. And she was crying now, and her voice was going, and she was still going. You don't get to call me that in front of these people. You don't get to be gentle in front of witnesses. That's not how it works. You don't get to pick which one you are when there's an audience. Danny stared at her, and for 1 second, 1 single second, Ethan saw the man's face do something completely unguarded, and what was on it was disbelief. Not rage, not calculation. Disbelief. Real, total, childlike disbelief, because it had never happened before. You're going to regret this, Danny said. Probably, Mia said. But I'm going to regret it here. The sirens came at 11:59, which meant somebody had called at 11:52, which meant somebody in that room had picked up a phone the second the man raised his voice, and before anything had happened at all, and Ethan never did find out who. Danny heard them. He looked at the door. He looked at the window that wasn't there anymore. He looked at Mia. And he said, "You'll call me." "No." "You'll call me by Thursday." "No. You called me by Thursday every single time," he said, and there was something in it now that wasn't a threat. It was worse than a threat, it was need. And Ethan understood in that second that the man was not the thing Mia had been afraid of, that the man was just the shape it took. And the real thing was that after 4 years, she had been trained to hear that voice and answer it. "I'm not calling," Mia said. "Mia, I'm not calling," she said. "I have work Monday." At 12:03, there were 2 officers in the doorway, and Danny Reyes did not run and did not fight, and he put his hands out for them almost politely. And he kept his eyes on Mia the whole time, and he was smiling again by the time they turned him around. At 12:20, a young officer with a notebook said, "Ma'am, do you want to make a statement? About the window?" "About anything," he said. And Mia stood there, and Ethan watched her not answer for 11 full seconds, and he understood every single one of them because 4 years is a long time, and a statement is a piece of paper, and a piece of paper is a thing that can be used against you. And he had no idea, none, what she was going to say. Then she said, "I have pictures." The officer looked up. "I have pictures," Mia said. "Of all of it, 4 years of it, every time." She was staring at the floor. "I never sent them to anybody. I just took them. I don't know why I took them. I'd take them in the bathroom with the door locked, and then I'd delete the ones I couldn't look at, and I kept the rest, and I don't know why." Ethan closed his eyes. "I do," he said. "What? You know why." "No, I don't." "Yeah, you do," Ethan said. "You took them for today." And Mia Torres put both hands over her face and made a sound that Ethan Carter would remember for the rest of his life. And Denise's neighbor Ruth, 68 years old, crossed a cafe full of broken glass and put her arms around a woman she had never spoken to in her life and held on. At 1:15, the officers were gone, and the glass was in bags, and 14 people had given 14 statements, and not one of them had left before they did. At 1:40, Sophie came down the stairs. "Dad? Hey, kiddo? Is Mia okay?" Ethan looked at the kitchen doorway where Mia was sitting on an overturned crate with a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. "Ask her," he said. Sophie went into the kitchen. "Mia." "Hi, Sophie. Are you okay?" Mia looked at her. And Ethan, standing in the doorway, watched a woman decide in real time whether to say the thing she had said every day for 4 years. "No," Mia said. Sophie nodded seriously. "Okay." "Okay. That's allowed," Sophie said. "You told me. Ugly doesn't change what it does." She thought about it. "You said it about pancakes, but I think it's about everything." And Mia Torres started laughing and crying at the same time, and pulled an 8-year-old into her lap and held on to her like she was the last solid thing in the entire world. At 3 o'clock, Ethan was sweeping, and Denise came in through where the window used to be. "What do you need?" she said. "Denise." "Ethan, what do you need?" "Plywood," he said. "It's fine. I'll get plywood. Marcus's mom's husband does windows." "Denise." "He'll be here at 5, she said. "And Ruth's calling her nephew about the door." She looked at the mess. "And I'm making soup." "You don't have to." "Bones," Denise said. 4 hours. Barely a bubble. She was already rolling up her sleeves. "I got taught by the best cook in the city. Go help her." At 6:15, the window was boarded and the cafe was empty, and Mia was still sitting on the crate. Ethan sat down on the floor across from her because there was nowhere else. 4 times, he said. "Yeah. You want to tell me about it?" "No." "Okay." They sat there. Then Mia said, "It's not that I wanted to go back." "I know." You don't. Okay. It's that after a while there's nowhere else, she said. That's the whole trick. He didn't lock a door. He just made sure there wasn't anywhere else, and then he left the door open, and he waited. She turned the cold coffee in her hands. 4 times I walked out, and 4 times I stood on a sidewalk at 11 at night, and I had my phone in my hand, and there was nobody in it. Nobody. 400 contacts, and nobody I could call at 11 at night. Ethan didn't say anything. That's what he was doing in here, Mia said. Friday, with the coffee. He wasn't counting exits. She looked up at him. He was counting people. Ethan sat on the floor of his ruined cafe. How many'd he count? He said. 14, Mia said, and her voice went completely apart. Ethan, he counted 14. Sunday 9 in the morning, and the phone rang. Not her cell. The cafe landline. Ethan picked it up and said, Cornerstone. And a woman's voice said, Is this the place with the window? Yes. How much is the window? I'm sorry. The window, the woman said. Line. Ethan picked it up and said, Cornerstone. And a woman's voice said, Is this the place with the window? Yes. How much is the window? I'm sorry. The window, the woman said. How much? Ma'am, who is this? My name's Angela. I live on 5th. I wasn't there yesterday. My sister was there yesterday. A pause. How much is the window, please? Ethan stood with the phone against his ear and looked at the plywood. 1100, he said. Okay, Angela said, and hung up. At 9:40 the phone rang again. At 10:15 it rang again. At 10:50 a man in a windbreaker walked in through the doorway that didn't have a door in it and put 4 20s on the counter and said, For the window, and walked out before Ethan could say a single word, and Ethan stood there holding $80 from a man whose name he never learned. At 11:30 Mia came in the back and stopped when she saw the counter. What is that? That's the window fund. What's a window fund? Apparently, it's a thing that exists now, Ethan said. She looked at the pile. Cash mostly. A check from someone's church. An envelope with a sticky note on it that said, From table 6. Ethan? Yeah. I broke your window. Danny broke my window. Because of me. Ethan put his hands flat on the counter. Mia, he said, if you say that one more time, I'm going to make you count it. Count what? The money, all of it, bill by bill. He pushed it toward her. You want to tell me you cost me a window fine? Then you sit down and you count what came in because of you, and then we'll see who's ahead. She didn't touch it. That's not fair, she said. No, Ethan agreed. It's not. Monday, 5:30 in the morning, and the coffee was on. She came up the alley at 5:28, and Ethan was standing in the doorway, and neither of them said anything about it. Roast, he said. Roast. We don't have a window. We have an oven, Mia said, and tied on her apron. At 7:10 there were 6 people outside. At 7:30 there were 19. At 7:45 Ethan came into the kitchen and said, Mia, there are people out there who don't live here. What? Ohio plates. There's a car with Ohio plates parked in front of my boarded-up window. Mia stopped stirring. Why? I don't know. Ethan, why? I don't know, he said, and he was telling the truth, and he wouldn't find out until Wednesday. At 8:50 the phone in her pocket buzzed once. She didn't move. It buzzed again. Mia, Ethan said. I know. Mia, look at it. I know what it is. Look at it anyway. She took it out. She looked at the screen, and Ethan watched her face come apart in a way he had not seen it do yet, not with Danny standing in the middle of her, not with the glass on the floor. He's out, she said. What? He's out. It's a somebody posted it. He's out. She was holding the phone with both hands. It's a text, from a number I don't know. Don't read it. I already read it. What does it say? It says, Mia said, Thursday. The kitchen was completely silent. That's it, she said. That's the whole text. One word. Ethan reached over and took the phone out of her hands gently and set it on the counter face down. Okay, he said. Ethan. Mia, okay. He turned her by the shoulders and pointed her at the stove. Roast, right now, roast. That's your answer? Yeah, he said. That's my answer. He gets Thursday. He doesn't get today. She stood there. Then she picked up the spoon. At 10:30, a woman named Carla Reyes Ortiz came into the cafe with a folder and a badge on a lanyard and said, I'm looking for Mia Torres. Ethan put himself in front of the kitchen door without thinking about it. Who are you? I'm a victim advocate with the DA's office. Prove it. She showed him the badge. He looked at it. He looked at her. She was about 50, and she had the tired, patient face of a woman who had been asked to prove it about 900 times. You did that right, Carla said. What? Most people don't. Most people just let me in. She put the folder on the counter. Can I talk to her? That's up to her. Good answer, Carla said. At 10:50, they were at table 4, and Mia was sitting with her hands around a coffee she wasn't drinking, and Carla Reyes Ortiz was saying, I'm going to tell you the bad thing first, because everybody tells the good thing first, and then you don't hear anything after the bad thing anyway. Okay? He's out. He was arraigned at 8 this morning. Criminal mischief disorderly conduct. He posted. How much? 1,500. Mia laughed. It wasn't a good sound. 1,500? She said. Yeah. That's what a window costs. Yeah, Carla said. That's the bad thing. Now here's the other thing. She opened the folder. There were 14 witnesses in this room on Saturday. Do you know how many gave statements? 14. Ethan said. 14. Carla said. Ethan, in 11 years I have never had 14. I have had 2. I have had 1. I have had a room with 9 people in it, and everybody discovered they were in the bathroom. She flipped a page. 4 of them independently describe marks on your right forearm. 4. Nobody prompted them. That's not a window case anymore. Mia didn't say anything. What's your call, Mia? Carla said. About what? About whether you want to be a case. I don't understand. Yes, you do, Carla said, and her voice was kind and it did not move an inch. You've been asked this before. Somebody's asked you this before. A nurse, a cop, somebody. Mia looked at the table. Twice, she said. And what did you say? I said I fell. Okay, Carla said. So what do you say now? The cafe was quiet. Ethan stood up. I'll be at the counter, he said. Ethan. No, he said. This one's not mine. And he walked away. And it was the hardest walk he'd taken in 6 years, and he stood behind his counter and dried the same mug 4 times, and did not look over there once. At 11:40, Carla Reyes Ortiz came to the counter with the folder closed. Well, Ethan said, that's hers to tell you. Is she okay? No, Carla said. But she's doing it. At 12:15, Mia came into the kitchen and picked up a knife and started on the onions and said without looking up, I'm filing. Ethan set down the tray he was holding. Everything, he said. Everything, she said. 4 years, every picture. Mia. Don't. Mia. Don't say anything nice to me right now, she said, or I'm going to stop. Okay. Just say something normal. Ethan thought about it. We're out of time, he said. And Mia Torres laughed so hard she had to put the knife down. Tuesday, 2 in the afternoon, and the protective order hearing was at 3, and at 2:15, Mia was sitting on the crate in the kitchen not moving. Mia, I'm not ready. You've got 45 minutes. I'm not ready in 45 minutes. You've been ready for 4 years, Ethan said. She looked up at him. What do I wear? She said. And it came out so small and so young, and Ethan understood in 1 second that it was not a question about clothes. What do I wear? Mia said again, because if I wear long sleeves, they'll think I'm hiding it, and if I wear short sleeves, they'll think I'm... She stopped. They'll think I'm using it. Ethan sat down on the floor. You wear whatever you want, he said. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I've got. Ethan, I'm serious. So am I, he said. Mia, listen to me. For 4 years, somebody told you what to wear. He didn't say it like that. He said it like, you're not wearing that, are you? Right? She went completely still. Right, Ethan said. Yeah. So today you wear whatever you want, and if it's wrong, it's yours. It's your wrong. You get to have your own wrong now. He stood up. That's the whole thing. That's the whole entire thing. Mia sat on the crate. Then she said, short sleeves. Okay, I'm going to wear short sleeves. Okay. They're going to look. Let them, Ethan said. At 3:05 in a courtroom on the 4th floor, Mia Torres sat in short sleeves and did not put her arms under the table. At 3:22, Danny Reyes walked in with a lawyer in a good suit, and he did not look at her once. Not once. Not for the entire hearing, and that was somehow worse than anything. At 3:41, his lawyer said the words, her mental health history, and Ethan came halfway out of his seat and Carla Reyes Ortiz put her hand on his arm without looking at him. At 3:55, Mia was asked to speak, and she stood up, and she said, I don't have anything prepared. The judge said, that's all right. I thought I would, Mia said. I thought I'd have a speech. I've had 4 years to write a speech. She was holding the edge of the table. I don't have one. Nobody said anything. I just want him to not know where I work, she said. That's all I want. That's the whole thing. I know that sounds small, but he came into a place with 14 people in it and a little girl at table 4, and he raised his voice and I flinched and everyone saw. And I'd been not flinching in front of people for 4 years. That was my whole job. Not flinching in front of people. The judge was watching her. So I just want him to not know where I work, Mia said. Please. At 4:08, the order was granted. 500 feet. 1 year. At 4:09, Danny Reyes looked at her. Just once. On the way out. 2 seconds. And he smiled. And Ethan felt it go through him like a wire. Because there was nothing in that smile that a piece of paper could stop, and both of them knew it. At 4:30 in the parking garage, Mia said, It doesn't do anything. It does something. It's paper, Ethan. It's paper with a number on it, Ethan said. 500 feet. Now when he's at 499, somebody besides you gets to have an opinion about it. Mia stopped walking. That's it, she said. That's the whole thing right there. That's what I've been trying to say for 4 years, and I never... She put her hand over her mouth. Somebody else gets to have an opinion about it. Yeah, because it was only ever me, she said. It was only ever me in the room deciding whether it counted, and I always decided it didn't. Ethan didn't say anything. That's what he built, Mia said. He didn't build a cage. He built a room with one person in it who got to decide, and then he spent 4 years telling her what to decide. Wednesday 7 in the morning, and Ethan found out about the Ohio plates. Denise came in with her phone out and put it on the counter, face up, and said, Ethan. What? Look. Denise, I have 19 people. Ethan, look. He looked. It was a video. Shot vertical shaky from about table 9, 51 seconds long. It was Saturday. It was Danny in the middle of the floor, and Ethan stepping in front of Mia, and it was Ruth standing up out of her chair at table 2. Under it, 2.1 million views. Ethan put the phone down. 2 million, he said. It was 400,000 last night. Denise, there's a comment section, Denise said. And Ethan, I want you to know that I have read a lot of comment sections in my life, and I have never read one like this one. And I need you to sit down before you read it. Why? Because it's 40,000 people, Denise said, telling the same story. At 7:40, Ethan scrolled. My mother stayed 19 years. Nobody stood up. Not one person in 19 years. The way she flinched. I know that flinch. I did that flinch. The old lady standing up. I'm not okay. Somebody told her. I've been trying to explain this to my family for a decade, and this man did it in 2 words. I left in 2019. I'm 34. This is the first time I've ever typed that. At 8:05, Ethan closed the phone and went into the kitchen and stood there. What? Mia said. Nothing. Ethan. Mia, sit down. I'm working. Mia, sit down. She sat down, he told her. And she said nothing for 11 seconds, and then she said, take it down. I can't take it down. Call them and take it down. Mia. I flinched, she said. 2 million people watched me flinch. Mia. 2 million people watched me be that, she said, and her voice was going up, and it kept going up. And I don't get to Ethan. That's the thing I spent 4 years making sure nobody saw. That's the one thing. Mia. And now it's a video. People are watching it on their phones. Mia, Ethan said. Read the comments. I don't want to read the comments. Read the comments. I know what's in the comments, she shouted. I know exactly what's in the comments. I've been fat my whole life, Ethan. I know what's in the comments. Don't you tell me to read the comments. And Ethan put the phone in her hand. And Mia Torres looked down at it, and she read for 4 minutes without saying one word. And then she said in a voice that had nothing left in it at all, 40,000. Yeah. There's 40,000 of them. Yeah. Ethan, there. She scrolled. She scrolled again. She kept scrolling. This one's a man. This one's a 60-year-old man. He says his sister. He says he didn't do anything, and it's been 30 years, and he didn't do anything. Ethan sat down on the floor across from her. Mia, he said, you know what you did for that guy? I didn't do anything. I stood in a room. You didn't say you fell, Ethan said. And she stopped. 14 people watched somebody get hurt, and this time somebody didn't say she fell, he said. That's it. That's the whole video. That's what 2 million people are looking at. Mia sat on the crate with the phone in her lap. Then she said, my mother has a phone. Ethan didn't move. My mother has a phone, Mia said again. And my cousin's on that app. My cousin Elena is on that app every day of her life. At 8:52, the phone in her lap rang. Mia looked at it. Ethan looked at it. The screen said, Mom. Oh, God, Mia said. Mia. Oh, God, Ethan. Mia. I haven't talked to her in 3 years. It rang again. 3 years. Mia said, I haven't talked to her in 3 years. What do I? Answer it. I can't. Mia, answer the phone. And Mia Torres answered the phone. And she said, Mom? And then she didn't say anything for a very long time, and Ethan got up and walked out of his own kitchen and stood behind his counter and put his hands over his face. At 9:20, she was still on the phone. At 9:40, she was still on the phone. At 10:05, she came out, and her face was destroyed, and she said she saw it. I figured. She saw it Monday night. She's been trying to find the cafe. She's been calling restaurants. Mia sat down at table 4. Ethan? She's been calling restaurants. Where is she? 2 hours, Mia said. She's 2 hours away. She's been 2 hours away for 4 years. And then she said, he told me she stopped calling. Ethan went very still. What? Year 2, Mia said. He said she stopped calling. He said your mother stopped calling, and I said okay. She was looking at the tabletop. And she never stopped. She never stopped calling Ethan. She called every week, every single week for 3 years. Mia, he had my phone, Mia said. He had my phone at night. It charged on his side. He said it was because she stopped. She laughed and it was terrible. It doesn't even matter what he said. There was a reason. There was always a reason. There's a reason for everything, and every single reason is normal, and then one day you look up, and it's dark, and you can't say when. At 11 o'clock, Mia went back in the kitchen and made a roast. At 2:15, a woman came in the front door. She was 61 years old, and she was maybe 5'2", and she stood in the middle of the cafe and looked around. And Ethan Carter knew immediately with total certainty, and he came around the counter and said, "Mrs. Torres, where is she? Ma'am, where is she?" And the kitchen door opened. Ethan didn't watch it. He went out the front and stood on his own sidewalk in front of his boarded-up window for 4 minutes and let 2 women have a room to themselves, and he could hear it through the plywood, and he stood there with his hands in his pockets and his jaw locked, and he did not turn around. Sophie came out at some point and stood next to him. "Dad?" "Yeah." "Who's crying?" "Everybody, kiddo." "Is it good crying?" Ethan looked down at her. "Yeah," he said. "It's the good kind." Thursday. Ethan didn't sleep Wednesday night. He didn't pretend to. He sat at the counter from 2 a.m. until 5 with the lights off, and every time a car went past he looked up. At 5:28 she came up the alley. "You're standing outside again," Mia said. "Yep." "It's Thursday." "It is." "You've been out here all night." "Some of it." Mia stopped in front of him. "Ethan," she said, "go to bed. Roast takes 6 hours. Go to bed." "I'm fine." "You're not fine, you're gray." She pointed at the door. "Go upstairs." "Mia." "You have a kid," Mia said, "and she has school in 3 hours, and she needs a father who slept, and I need—" She stopped. "You need what?" Mia looked at him. "I need you to not be the guy who stands outside all night because of me," she said. "Because that's a guy who's going to get tired. And a guy who's going to get tired is a guy who's going to run out. And I have watched people run out my whole life, and I would rather you just—" Her voice went. "I would rather you sleep." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "That's not what this is," he said. "That's what it always is. Not this time." "Ethan." "Mia," he said. "I'm not standing out here because I'm your hero. I'm standing out here because he came into a room with my daughter in it." He put his coffee down on the step. "That's mine. That's not yours. You don't have to carry that one." She stared at him. "That's the difference," he said. "You keep waiting for me to hand you a bill. I'm not going to hand you a bill. There isn't one." And Mia Torres stood in the alley at 5:30 in the morning and cried, standing up in front of another person out loud with sound for the first time in 4 years. At 11 the phone buzzed in her pocket. Ethan saw her go rigid. "Don't," he said. "It's him. Don't look at it. It's 11 o'clock on Thursday and it's him. Mia." She took it out. She looked at the screen. And then she did a thing that Ethan did not expect and would think about for years. She turned it around and showed it to him. "Look," she said. Ethan looked. Unknown number. 1 text. "I know you're reading this." "He's right," Mia said. "I am reading it." "Mia, no, listen to me." She was breathing fast, but her voice was steady. "This is the part. This is the exact part. This is where I go outside and I call him. This is where I've gone outside and called him 4 times. She was staring at the phone. "Because it's easier. That's what nobody gets. It's not love and it's not fear. It's that it's easier, because if I call him, then I know what today is. And if I don't call him, then today is a thing I have to be awake for." Ethan didn't move. "So what do I do?" Mia said. "Ethan, tell me what to do." "No." "Ethan." "No," he said. "I'm not telling you what to do. That's the whole thing. That's the entire thing. That's not helpful." "I know." "That's the least helpful." "Mia." Ethan said, "If I tell you what to do with that phone, then in 6 months you'll have somebody else deciding, and it'll be me, and I'll be nicer about it, and it'll be the exact same room with 1 person in it." She stood there in his kitchen with the phone in her hand. And Ethan Carter turned around and walked out of the kitchen and let the door swing shut behind him. And that was the hardest thing he did in the entire 4 years that came after, and he never told anybody how hard it was, and he would not have done it any other way. He stood at his counter. He counted to 60. He counted to 60 again. At 11:04, the kitchen door opened. Mia came out. She walked across the cafe and she put the phone on the counter in front of him and she said, "Give it to Carla." Ethan looked at it. "All of it." "All of it," she said. "Screenshot it, back it up, whatever they do. And then I want a new number." She was shaking. "I want a new number today, not Monday. Today." "Mia." "And Ethan," she said. "Don't tell me what it is." "What?" "The new number. Don't tell me what it is." She looked up at him. "Because if I don't know it, I can't give it to him at 2 in the morning. And I want you to understand that I am telling you that I might. Because I might. And that's not a thing I get to pretend about anymore." Ethan Carter stood behind his counter and looked at this woman and felt something in his chest that he did not have a name for. "Okay," he said. At 3 that afternoon, Mia had a new number. At 3:15, she gave it to 4 people. Her mother, Carla, Ethan, and Denise, who cried. At 3:40, Sophie came home and said, "Can I have it?" And Mia said, "No." And Sophie said, "Why?" And Mia said, "Because you're 8 and you don't have a phone." And Sophie said, "That's a location." And Mia said, "That's not what that means." And Sophie said, "It is now, Dad made it a thing." And Mia laughed until she had to sit down. Friday 9 in the morning, and Carla Reyes Ortiz came in with the folder. "Sit down," she said. "That's what you said Monday," Mia said. "Sit down anyway." They sat. "We have him on the mischief," Carla said. "That's nothing. That's a fine and a class." "Okay. We also have 411 photographs with embedded timestamps and location data spanning 47 months, Carla said, "and a witness list of 14 and a video with 3 million views on it that shows him doing in public a version of what he did to you in private for 4 years. Mia didn't say anything. "Mia," Carla said, "look at me." She looked. "It's not going to be fast," Carla said. "I need you to hear that part more than any other part. It's going to be slow, and it's going to be boring, and there's going to be a day about 8 months from now where you're sitting in a hallway and you're going to want to drop it just so it stops. Okay? On that day you're going to call me. Okay. Say it back. On that day I'll call you," Mia said. "Good," Carla said. And then she closed the folder and said, "One more thing, and this one's not my job, so you can tell me to go to hell." "What? Are you seeing anybody?" "What?" "A therapist," Carla said. Mia laughed. "I can't afford a therapist." "Okay," Carla said, and wrote something on a card and slid it across the table. "This one's free. It's grant-funded. It's specifically for this, and there's a 9-week wait, and I already put you on it Monday." Mia stared at the card. "You put me on it Monday," she said. "I put you on it Monday." "Before I said yes." "Before you said yes," Carla agreed. "You can take yourself off. It's a phone call." Mia sat there with the card. Then she said, 9 weeks. 9 weeks. That's a long time." "Yeah," Carla said. "It is. It's the worst part of my job." She stood up and picked up her bag. "So do something with the 9 weeks." At 11:30, Mia came into the kitchen and stood there with the card in her hand. "Ethan." "Yeah." "What do I do for 9 weeks?" Ethan looked at her. "You cook," he said. And Mia Torres put the card in her apron pocket and picked up a knife and said, "We need time." Week 1 of the 9, the window went in. Marcus's mother's husband showed up at 7 in the morning with a truck and 2 guys, and he would not take money. "Sir," Ethan said. "Don't." "Sir, there's $1,100 on my counter that people I don't know gave me." "Then give it to her," the man said, and pointed at the kitchen door with a caulk gun. "That's what they gave it to you for." At 11, the glass went in, and the cafe got bright again, and 19 people applauded, and Mia came out to see it and stopped in the doorway. It's the same window, she said. It's a new window. It looks the same. That's the idea, Ethan said. Mia stood there looking at it. He's going to see it, she said. He's going to drive past and see the windows fixed. Yep. He's going to know we fixed it. That's the idea too, Ethan said. Week 2, she started leaving the sleeves. Not on purpose. That was the thing. There was no moment, no decision, no scene where she rolled them up and looked in a mirror. It was a hot Tuesday, and she pushed them to her elbows because the kitchen was 90 degrees, and she worked like that for 4 hours. And at 2 o'clock she looked down at her own arms and realized. She came out front. Ethan. Yeah. Did anybody say anything? About what? Ethan. He looked at her arms. He looked at her face. Nobody said anything, he said. Nobody. Mia, there were 40 people in here today. And nobody said one word, Ethan said. She went back in the kitchen and Ethan heard a pan hit the floor and he did not go in. Week 3, a man came in at 3 in the afternoon and asked for her. Ethan's whole body went to concrete. Who are you? My name's Ray. He was about 65. He had his hat in his hands, which Ethan noticed. I saw the video. Sir, she's working. I know she's working. The man stopped. He turned the hat around in his hands. My sister's name was Denise. Not your Denise. My Denise. Different Denise. Ethan put down the mug. Was, he said. 94, Ray said. It'll be 32 years in October. Nobody said anything. I was 29, Ray said. I knew. I want to be clear about that with you because I've spent 32 years not being clear about it with anybody. I knew. I sat at her kitchen table and I knew, and I said, well, that's between them. Ethan didn't move. That's what we said back then, Ray said. That's between them. Sir, I'm not going to bother her, Ray said. I don't want anything. I'm not going to make her say something to me. He put the hat back on. I just wanted to eat here once. That's the whole thing. I wanted to give somebody $11. Ethan stood behind his counter for a second. Then he said, Table 4. I'll take the counter. Table 4, Ethan said. It's the good one. Ray sat at table 4. And at 3:40, Mia came out with a plate because Ethan had asked her to, and she set it down, and she didn't know anything. And Ray looked up at her and could not get a word out of his mouth. Mia looked at him. Then she said, Take your time. And she went back in the kitchen. And Ray sat at table 4 for an hour and a half and ate a pot roast and cried the way a 65-year-old man cries, which is silently into a napkin with his hand over his eyes. He left $40 on an $11 check. He came back the next Wednesday, and the one after that, and every Wednesday for the next 2 years, and he always sat at table 4, and it took him 8 months to tell Mia his sister's name, and when he did, Mia stopped in the middle of the floor with a tray in her hands and said, Say it again. Denise. Say the whole thing. Denise Marie Halloran. Okay, Mia said. Okay, I've got it now. And she never forgot it. Not once. For years. Week 4. Sophie got in a fight at school. Ethan got the call at 1:15, and he was in the parking lot at 1:40, and by 2 he was sitting across from a principal who was doing that thing where the mouth is careful and the eyes are not. She pushed him, the principal said. Okay. Mr. Carter, she pushed a child. I heard you. Sophie sat in the chair next to him with her arms folded and her chin out, and she did not look sorry about one single thing. Sophie, Ethan said. Why? He said a thing. What thing? I'm not saying it. Sophie. I'm not saying it, Dad. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Was it about Mia? He said. And Sophie's chin came down. And the whole thing was in her face at once, all of it. And Ethan Carter felt something split open in his chest. He said she's... Sophie stopped. Her eyes went. He said the reason it's on the internet is because she's... Don't. He said people only care because she's... Sophie, don't. He said it in a funny voice, Sophie said, and then she was crying hard the way 8-year-olds cry with her whole face. He did the voice, Dad, he did a voice, and everybody laughed, and I couldn't. Ethan got down on the floor of the principal's office and put his arms around his daughter. Over her head, he looked at the principal. She's suspended for a day, the principal said. Fine. Mr. Carter. I said fine, Ethan said. I'm not arguing. She pushed a kid. That's a day. He stood up. But you're going to do something about the voice. We'll speak with him. You're going to do something about the voice, Ethan said again, and he did not raise his own, not 1 inch, and something in the room changed. At 4 o'clock in the car, Sophie said, Are you mad? Yeah, at me, a little. Why? Because you pushed somebody, Ethan said. That's the whole reason. That's it. You don't get to push people. But he said something ugly, and you put your hands on him, Ethan said. Those are two different things. They're always going to be two different things. You know who taught me that? Who? Nobody, Ethan said. I figured it out at 38 in a cafe. Sophie was quiet. Then she said, Am I going to tell her? Yeah. Do I have to? Yeah. Why? Because she'll find out, Ethan said, and if she finds out from somebody else, she's going to think you were ashamed of her. Sophie's face did something. I'm not, she said. I know. Dad, I'm not. I know, kiddo. At 5:15, Sophie stood in the kitchen doorway and told Mia. All of it. The word, the voice, the push. She didn't leave anything out, and she didn't cry until the very end. Mia listened without moving. Then she crouched down. Sophie, I'm sorry. Look at me. Sophie looked at her. Did you push him because of what he said about me? Mia asked, or because everybody laughed? And Sophie stopped. And she thought about it. Really thought about it for a long 5 seconds the way she thought about butter. Because everybody laughed, she said. Yeah, Mia said quietly. That's what I thought. Is that bad? No, Mia said. That's the part that hurts. That's always the part that hurts. It's never the one guy. It's the room. Sophie stared at her. But you still don't push, Mia said. That's what Dad said. Your dad's right. He's always right, Sophie said bitterly. It's annoying. And Mia laughed and pulled her in and said into her hair, Thank you for pushing him. MIA. I said don't do it, Mia said. I didn't say I wasn't grateful. Those are two different things too. Week 6, her mother started coming Saturdays. 2 hours each way, every Saturday. She sat at table 2 with Ruth, who had adopted her within 11 minutes of meeting her, and the two of them held court like a small hostile government, and by week 8, Mrs. Torres had opinions about the menu. The roast is dry. Mom, I'm saying what it is. It's not dry. Mija, I raised you. I know what dry is. It's not dry, Mia said from the kitchen at a volume that carried across the entire cafe. And Ethan at the register put his hand over his mouth, because it took him a second to understand what he'd just heard. She had shouted, in a room, in front of people, at someone she loved, without flinching, without apologizing, without her hand going over her mouth. She'd just shouted at her mother about a roast like a person. Ethan stood behind his counter and had to look at the ceiling for a second. Week 9, the therapist called. Mia took it in the alley with the door propped open, and Ethan standing in the doorway like an idiot because that was the rule, and neither of them had ever revisited it. She was out there 11 minutes. She came back in and picked up a knife. Well, Ethan said. Tuesday. That's it. That's it, Mia said. It's Tuesday at 4. Mia. Ethan, I swear to God if you say something nice. I wasn't going to. You were absolutely going to. I was going to say we're out of time, Ethan said. We're not out of time. We're always out of time. That's because you never write it down, Mia said. And it came out so normal, so completely and utterly normal, that both of them stopped for a second and heard it. Tuesday at 4 she went. Tuesday at 6:15 she came back and went straight into the kitchen and didn't say anything, and Ethan didn't ask. Wednesday at 4 she was fine. Thursday she wasn't. Thursday she came in at 5:30 and was gray and she didn't say good morning, and at 9:40 she put down a pan and walked out the back door and stood in the alley for 20 minutes. Ethan gave her 15. Then he went out. Mia. Don't. Okay. He stood there. It's worse, she said. Okay. Everybody says it gets better and it's worse. It's so much worse, Ethan. I was fine. I was fine for 4 years. I got up, I went to work, I didn't. She had her hands over her face. And now I can't be in a room with a closed door and I don't know why, and it's been 4 years, and now it's a problem. Now. Yeah, Ethan said. That's it. Yeah. Mia, I don't know anything about this. Then say something. Okay. Ethan put his hands in his pockets. You know how you make stock? What? You told Denise. 4 hours, low. If it boils, it goes bitter. Ethan. And you told her the recipe doesn't say it right because it's not part of the recipe. It's part of the kitchen. He looked at her. You did 4 years of the kitchen. Nobody wrote it down. Now you're doing the 4 hours. Mia stood in the alley and stared at him. That's the worst metaphor I've ever heard in my life, she said. Yeah. That's genuinely terrible. I know. 4 hours low, she said. Ethan, that's... I panicked, he said. You said say something. And Mia Torres laughed so hard in an alley that she had to sit down on the step, and she laughed until it turned into the other thing, and Ethan sat down next to her on the step and did not touch her and did not leave, and they sat there for 9 minutes while the pot roast burned. It burned all the way. Total loss. They served soup. Nobody complained. Month 5 the case moved. Carla called on a Tuesday and said they offered. Offered what? Plea. Misdemeanor. Time served 2 years probation batterer's intervention. Mia sat down on the crate. That's it. That's it. 4 years and 400 photographs and that's it. That's it, Carla said. And she didn't soften it not one word. Or we go. And if we go, it's 8 months minimum, and his lawyer says your mental health history in a room with 12 strangers, and he says it about 9 times, and there's a day in a hallway. You told me about the day in the hallway. I did. You told me I'd call you. You are calling me, Carla said. This is the day. It just came early. Mia sat there. Ethan stood in the doorway and said nothing, and it cost him everything he had. What do you think? Mia said. Mia, I can't. I'm not asking Ethan. I'm asking you. You've done this 11 years. What do you think? I think, Carla said slowly, that a misdemeanor is nothing. And I think a trial is 8 months of your life and a coin flip. And I think you're the only person on this earth who gets to weigh those 2 things. The kitchen was quiet. Then Mia said, Does he have to say it? Say what? In the plea, does he have to say what he did, out loud, in a room? Carla was quiet for a second. Yes, she said. He allocutes. He stands up and he says what he did. Out loud. Out loud, on the record, forever. Mia closed her eyes. Then that's what I want, she said. Mia, that's what I want, she said. I don't need him in a cage, Carla. I need him to say it in front of somebody. Because for 4 years the only person in the room was me, and I was the one deciding whether it happened, and I always decided it didn't. Her voice cracked straight down the middle. I want somebody with a robe on to write it down. Ethan turned around and walked out of his own kitchen. He stood behind his counter and gripped the edge of it until his hands hurt. The allocution was on a Thursday in March at 9:15 in the morning. Mia wore short sleeves. Danny Reyes stood up in a courtroom on the 4th floor and read off a piece of paper his lawyer had written in a flat voice, without 1 ounce of anything in it. And he said the dates, and he said the words, and he said I caused physical injury to Mia Torres, and he sat back down. It took 40 seconds, 4 years, 40 seconds. And Mia Torres sat in the second row and did not move, and did not cry, and did not look away. And when it was over, she said out loud in the courtroom quietly to nobody, "Okay." In the hallway afterward, she was shaking so hard she couldn't hold her bag. "Mia." It was 40 seconds. "Mia." He didn't mean it. "Ethan." He didn't mean one word of it. He was reading. "Mia." 40 seconds, she said, "for 4 years. Mia." Ethan said, "It's written down." And she stopped. "It's written down," he said. He didn't have to mean it. That was never the deal. The deal was he had to say it out loud in a room with a stranger in it, and now it's in a book, and in 30 years, it'll still be in the book, and he can say whatever he wants at any dinner table for the rest of his life, and it will still be in the book. Mia stood in the hallway on the 4th floor. Then she said, "It's in the book. It's in the book." "Ethan, it's in the book." "Yeah," he said. And she put her forehead against his shoulder for about 4 seconds, and that was all, and then she picked up her bag and said, "I have a roast in." They got back at 11:40. There were 31 people waiting. Nobody had told them. Ethan never found out who told them. He suspected Denise, and Denise denied it for 2 years, and then admitted it at a Christmas party with no remorse whatsoever. 31 people in a cafe that seats 32. Nobody clapped. Ruth had apparently issued instructions about that. They just sat there, and they'd been sitting there for 2 hours, and every one of them had ordered something. Mia came in the front door and stopped, and Ruth stood up. Just Ruth. 68 years old. She stood up out of her chair at table 2, the same chair the same way, and she didn't say a word. And then 30 other people stood up. And Mia Torres put her hand over her mouth and said, from behind it, wrecked, "I have to, there's a roast." And she went in the kitchen. And 31 people sat back down and waited another 40 minutes for their food, and not one of them said a word about it. Ethan gave her the raise in June. No. Mia. No. You haven't heard the number. I don't need the number. It's 40%. Mia put down the knife. Ethan, you're carrying this place. You gave me a job when nobody would... Don't, Ethan said. Don't do that. Don't you dare do that. Do what was that? He came into the kitchen. That thing where you make it a favor, that's not what happened. I didn't do you a favor, Mia. I hired a cook because I needed a cook, and I was 3 weeks from closing, and you saved my business. You gave me a chance. I gave you a job, Ethan said. You did the rest. And every time you call it a favor, you're doing his math. Mia went absolutely still. What? You heard me. That's not fair. It's completely fair, Ethan said. He spent 4 years teaching you that anything you got was charity, and you had a debt on it. And now every time somebody hands you something, you reach for the bill. He pointed at her with the order pad. There's no bill. Take the raise. Mia stood in the kitchen with her hands on the counter. 40%, she said. 40%. That's too much. It's not enough, Ethan said. It's what I can do. It's not enough. In a year, it'll be more. And Mia said, okay, and turned around, and Ethan went out front and let her have it. She made head chef in October, which was a title that meant nothing legally and everything else. She hired 2 people. She interviewed them herself. Ethan sat at the counter and did not participate, and afterward he asked her how she chose, and she said, the second one lied on her resume. So you didn't hire her? I hired her. Mia. She lied about the hotel, Mia said. I called. She was there 4 months, not 2 years. She wiped down the station. And then I asked her why she lied, and she looked at the floor and said she needed the job. Ethan stopped. Ethan, Mia said. She looked at the floor. He didn't say anything for a second. Okay, he said. The girl's name was Priya, and she was 23, and she stayed 6 years, and she cried at Mia's wedding. But that's a different story. The thing about the 2 million view video is that it kept going. 5 million in month 3, 11 million by the end of the year. It got stitched and duetted and put on morning shows with the sound off. Somebody made a version with music under it that Ethan found genuinely offensive. 3 separate producers called about a documentary. Mia said no to all 3. Why? Ethan said. Because they want the flinch. Mia, that's what they want, Ethan. All 3 of them said the same words. That moment. They want the moment. She was cutting onions, and she didn't look up. Nobody wants the 9 weeks. Nobody wants Tuesday at 4. So say no. I said no. Then say no. I said no. Mia said, and laughed, and Ethan put his hands up. But the 4th one didn't call about the video. The 4th one was a woman named Priscilla from a shelter network 3 counties over, and she didn't want a documentary. She wanted 40 minutes on a Saturday morning in a church basement with 12 women in folding chairs. And Mia said no to that too. For 8 months. She said no in October and no in December and no in February. And then one Wednesday in June she was standing in the kitchen, and Ray was at table 4 eating a pot roast, and Sophie was on the crate learning how to break down a chicken, and Mia Torres put down a knife and walked out front and said, Ethan. Yeah. How do I call somebody back after 8 months? You just call them. It's been 8 months. Mia. Ethan said. She's been waiting 8 months. She's not going to be mad about the phone. The church basement had 11 women in it, not 12, and Mia stood in front of them with no notes because she had learned in a courtroom that she was not a person who could use notes. And she said, I don't have a speech. Nobody said anything. I had 8 months to write a speech. Somebody laughed. One person. I'm going to tell you the part nobody tells you, Mia said. Everybody's going to tell you it gets better, and it does. But the first year is worse. The first year is so much worse than the last year with him, and nobody says that out loud. And then when it happens to you, you think you did it wrong. The room was completely silent. You didn't do it wrong, Mia said. That's the whole thing I came to say. I could go home right now. That's it. You didn't do it wrong. It's supposed to be worse. It's worse because you were fine, and you were fine because you had to be, and now you don't have to be, so you're not. A woman in the 3rd row started crying. And I'm going to tell you the other part, Mia said, and her voice went, and she kept going, because that was the thing she kept going. It's going to be one person. That's how it starts. You're going to think it takes a whole life, and it takes one person. One person who doesn't ask you what you did to deserve it. 11 women in folding chairs. For me, it was a guy who needed a cook, Mia said. That's all it was. He didn't rescue me. He didn't know anything. He didn't know one single thing about any of it, and he hired me anyway, and then he said 4 words to me, and I want to tell you what they were because I've thought about them every day for 2 years. She stopped. He said, just cook, that's all I need. Nobody moved. That's all I need, Mia said. You understand? He said I need something and you have it. That's it. That's the whole sentence. He didn't say I'll take a chance on you. He didn't say I see potential in you. He said I need something, and you have it. And it was the first time in 4 years anybody had told me I had something. She looked at 11 women. That's what it is, she said. That's all it ever is. Somebody needs to look at you and want something you've got. Not fix you. Not save you. Just want something you've got before they know one thing about you. She went back once a month for 6 years. Ethan drove her the first 4 times, and then she got a car. The cafe did not become famous. That's the part people get wrong when they tell it. It didn't become a chain, and there was no book deal, and the video eventually stopped being a video and became the thing videos become, which is nothing. The Cornerstone Cafe became a place in a neighborhood where 32 people could sit down. That's all. There was a woman named Ruth at table 2 twice a week until she died at 74. And there was a man named Ray at table 4 on Wednesdays who talked about a sister named Denise Marie Halloran until he could say her name without his voice going, which took him about 3 years. There was a florist across the street who made her mother's soup every Sunday. There was a kid named Marcus who worked the register at 16 and was wrong about a lot of things, but never again about pancakes. There was an 8-year-old girl who turned 9, and then 12, and then 17, and who wrote a college essay her senior year about a woman who taught her that ugly doesn't change what it does, and who did not tell her father about it until after it was submitted, and who found him sitting on the bottom stair of his own cafe at 11 at night with a piece of paper in his hands and his glasses off. "Dad, I'm fine." "Dad, are you?" "I'm fine, kiddo," Ethan Carter said. "Go to bed." And there was a head chef named Mia Torres who came in at 5:30 in the morning for 11 years in short sleeves, and who never once, not one single time, got asked about her arms by anybody who mattered. Danny Reyes finished his probation. He moved to a different state. He got married. Ethan heard about it from Carla 4 years later on a Tuesday, and he stood at his counter and turned it over in his head for about a minute, and then he put it down and never picked it up again. Because that was the last thing Mia taught him, and it took him the longest to learn. The story was never about the man. Everybody wants it to be about the man. Everybody wants the moment and the swing and the glass on the floor and the 40 seconds in a courtroom. That's what the producers wanted. That's what 11 million people watched with the sound off. But Ethan Carter ran a cafe for 19 years, and he'll tell you the truth if you ask him, and the truth is that the whole thing turned on a Monday morning at 9:15, when a woman he'd never met walked in holding a folder against her chest and couldn't look at him, and he had a choice. And the choice took him about 4 seconds, and he did not think it was a big deal at the time. He didn't see her weight. He didn't see her scars because she was wearing sleeves, and he wouldn't see them for 3 more days. He didn't know one single thing about her. He just needed a cook. And that's the part that saved her life. Not the standing in front of her, not the window, not the video with 11 million views. Those all came later, and they mattered, but they weren't the thing. The thing was 4 words on a Monday morning from a man who had no idea what he was doing, said to a woman who had spent 4 years being told she was nothing. "Just cook. That's all I need." He gave her dignity before he knew her story. That's the whole thing. That's all it takes. And if you're waiting until you know somebody's story to treat them like they're worth something, then you've already missed it, because the people who need it most are exactly the people who will never ever tell you. So don't wait. Look at the person in front of you right now, the one you'd walk past, the one who takes up too much space, the one who won't meet your eye, and give them the 4 seconds. That's all it takes. 4 seconds and a chance, and the plain human decency